Marcus stood in front of his canvas, brush in hand, his mind lost in thought. His small, cluttered studio was a far cry from the sleek galleries of the city, but here, surrounded by unfinished works and splashes of paint, he found peace. The world outside had never truly understood him either as an artist or as a person. His art was raw, unfiltered, and filled with the complex emotions that plagued his heart. It was a reflection of a story no one knew, not just his personal journey, but a tale of humanity's struggle for survival, its strength, its pain, and its untold history in the galaxy. But who would believe that? Marcus had spent years painting with the hope that someone, anyone, would finally recognize the depth of his work. But so far, he had only found rejection. He was black, and in the art world, that seemed to make all the difference. Art was often appreciated for its status, its connections, and its marketability, not for its depth or cultural significance. Marcus had learned that lesson the hard way. He had been to countless galleries, submitting his work over and over, only to have it dismissed without a second glance. The art world didn't care about his story, it didn't care about his heritage or the stories that his art told. They cared only for the surface, for what would sell. But Marcus was undeterred. He had always known that his work was worth something more. His paintings weren't just about color and composition. They were filled with meaning, a meaning that was more profound than the world seemed ready to acknowledge. He had painted humanity's untold history, the history that had been hidden from the galaxy for centuries, the story of why humans had been banned from Galactic war. He didn't know why his work had the ability to tell such a powerful story, but he could feel it in his bones. The brush strokes felt like they came from somewhere far beyond him, like he was channeling a deeper truth. Today, he stood before his latest piece, a vivid depiction of a human soldier, standing tall in the face of an unseen enemy, his eyes full of defiance. The background of the painting was filled with swirling colors of red, blue, and gold, representing the war-torn universe humanity had once been a part of. At the center of it all, the soldier's outstretched hand reached toward a distant galaxy, seemingly begging for peace, but also conveying an unyielding strength. It was a piece of art unlike anything Marcus had ever painted. His heart raced as he added the final touches, knowing that this work was special. This one, he believed, could change everything. But no one would see it. Not unless he took a chance. He had to show it to the right person, someone who could see the value in his work. He just needed that one breakthrough, that one person who would understand what he was trying to say. The problem was, the art world had already shown its true colors to him. They didn't care about the struggles of someone like him. They only cared about what could make them money. But Marcus was tired of fighting against a system that would never accept him. His only option was to keep pushing forward, even if it meant facing rejection yet again. That afternoon, he decided to take a trip to the most prestigious gallery in the city, the one that had rejected his work years ago. Veronica, the gallery owner, was a woman of high society, known for her sharp eye and impeccable taste in art. She had once glanced at his paintings and dismissed them as amateurish, suggesting that he should focus on simpler themes. She was not known for her tact, but her gallery was considered a goldmine for artists, and many sought her approval. If she didn't like a piece, it was destined to remain in obscurity. Still, Marcus felt that this time would be different. His work had evolved, and he was more confident than ever in its potential. Walking into Veronica's gallery was always an unsettling experience. The marble floors gleamed beneath his feet, and the walls were lined with extravagant paintings, works of art that commanded thousands, if not millions, of dollars. It felt like a world far removed from his own, a world that didn't belong to him but rather to the wealthy elite who could afford to buy their way into artistic prestige. But he had to try. He had to make her see the truth. Veronica was standing near the front desk, speaking to a wealthy client, her sharp gaze flicking over Marcus as he approached. She didn't even bother to smile. Well, if it isn't Mr. Marcus," she said with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. "What brings you here today? Another masterpiece, I presume?" Marcus ignored the mocking tone in her voice. I've got something new, he said, holding out a large canvas wrapped in a protective sheet. Veronica raised an eyebrow, clearly uninterested. I'm afraid we're not currently looking for new artists, Marcus. But you know that already, don't you? He nodded. He'd heard it all before. But this time, he was determined. I think you'll want to see this one, he said, his voice steady. With a disinterested sigh, Veronica waved her hand. Fine, show me, she said, clearly already thinking about what she was going to have for lunch. Marcus carefully unwrapped the canvas and set it against the wall. Veronica glanced at it, her eyes flicking over the painting with little more than a casual glance. She didn't see the soldier in the galaxy, the defiance, the strength. She saw none of the meaning behind it. Instead, she scoffed. Well, Marcus, it's certainly colorful, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. But I'm afraid it doesn't really have the kind of commercial appeal we're looking for. Maybe you should try a more minimalist approach. People like simple things these days, not this abstract nonsense. Marcus felt the familiar sting of rejection, but this time it didn't bother him as much. He had grown used to it, and he knew that the true value of his art was not in how it was perceived by people like Veronica. He could feel it, his art held a truth that the world had yet to discover. As Veronica turned to walk away, her dismissive attitude still lingering in the air, Marcus made a quiet decision. He wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not after all the years of struggle. His art was not just for the walls of a gallery, it was a message. And one day, the world would hear it. As he walked out of the gallery, a quiet resolve settled in his heart. The universe had its own plans for him, and he was just beginning to understand what they were. His art was more than just a story of human struggle, it was a key to something far greater, something that even Veronica couldn't begin to comprehend. For now, the world didn't know what he had created. But he would make sure that they did. It had been a few weeks since Marcus had shown his work to Veronica. The sting of her rejection was still fresh, but he knew better than to dwell on it. He had always trusted that his art would find its audience, even if it wasn't the one he expected. He spent the following days in his studio, working on new pieces, revisiting old ones, and refining his craft. But despite his focus, he couldn't shake the nagging thought that he needed to do something more to make people understand the depth of his art. One chilly morning, Marcus received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was smooth, confident, and carried the weight of someone who had seen and experienced the highest echelons of the art world. Mr. Marcus? The voice asked. I'm Andrew Turner, a private art collector and critic. I've recently come across one of your pieces, and I believe we need to have a conversation. Marcus stood still for a moment, unsure if he had heard correctly. Andrew Turner was a name he had heard whispered in the art circles. He was known for his sharp eye and impeccable taste, someone who could recognize genius where others saw mediocrity. A man who spent millions on rare art, and had the power to elevate an artist's career with a single endorsement. You've seen my work? Marcus asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. I have indeed, Turner replied. And I must say, I was struck by its depth. In particular, the piece you presented recently, a depiction of a soldier in a war-torn galaxy. There's something powerful about it, something important. I believe it speaks to a larger story, one that hasn't been fully told. Something that could change how humanity is viewed in the galactic community. The words echoed in Marcus's mind. Change how humanity is viewed in the galactic community. He had always felt that his work was connected to something greater than Earth, but to hear it articulated so clearly was overwhelming. His paintings, which he had always thought of as mere reflections of humanity's struggles, were now being interpreted as part of a cosmic narrative. Was it possible that his art was more than just a story of war and peace? I'd like to meet you in person, Mr. Marcus, Turner continued. Can we arrange a meeting at your studio? Marcus was stunned, his thoughts racing. He had never imagined that anyone would see his work through such a profound lens. But if this was truly his moment, he couldn't let it slip away. He quickly agreed to the meeting. That afternoon, Marcus prepared his studio for the visit. He made sure everything was in place, the pieces he had worked tirelessly on, the canvases leaning against the walls, the half-finished projects that held pieces of his soul. His heart raced as he waited for Andrew Turner's arrival. Could this be the breakthrough he had been dreaming of? When Turner finally arrived, he was accompanied by an assistant and a small entourage of art experts. The group moved through Marcus's studio with quiet reverence, inspecting the paintings, discussing their compositions in hushed tones. Marcus observed them closely, trying to gauge their reactions. Turner stopped in front of the painting that had first caught his attention, the soldier standing against a galactic backdrop. He stared at it for a long moment, as though trying to unravel its meaning. "This piece," Turner said, his voice low and thoughtful. "It's more than just a soldier. This is a depiction of humanity itself, a race that has survived and endured against all odds. The symbolism here, it's so clear. The soldier's outstretched hand, reaching for peace, but also preparing for war. The swirling colors, they represent the chaos of a galaxy on the brink of collapse." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Turner's interpretation was exactly what he had hoped for, but hearing it spoken aloud was like hearing the truth for the first time. "And then there's the background," Turner continued, his eyes never leaving the painting. "The galaxy itself, humanity's place in it. The way it's shrouded in mystery. But what stands out the most is the energy around the soldier. It's almost as if humanity was once a part of something much larger, something that has now been lost." Turner turned to face Marcus, his eyes now filled with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "This isn't just a painting, Mr. Marcus. This is a revelation. I believe your work holds the key to understanding why humanity has been banned from galactic warfare." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had always suspected there was something more to his art, something tied to the cosmic history of humanity. But to hear it articulated in such a clear and profound way was unsettling. Could his paintings really hold the answers to why humans had been excluded from the galactic war? Turner's words sent a ripple of excitement through Marcus, but there was also a sense of dread. What if the truth was too much to bear? What if this revelation was something the galaxy wasn't ready to understand? "You're not the only one who sees this, Mr. Marcus," Turner continued. "I've spoken to a few alien scholars, individuals with a deep understanding of galactic history. And your work, your art, it speaks to a long-forgotten story. Humanity's place in the galaxy, the reason they were banned from the galactic war, it's all here, in your paintings. I think we need to look further into this." Marcus felt a sense of unease wash over him. He had never intended for his art to carry such weight. It had always been a personal expression, a reflection of his own struggles and experiences. But now, it seemed to be part of a much larger narrative, one that had the potential to change everything. Turner reached into his bag and pulled out a sleek, holographic tablet. "I have connections with galactic historians and researchers. If you're open to it, I can help you uncover the full story behind your paintings. We can dive into the history of humanity's role in the galaxy, why they were excluded from the galactic war. This could be the breakthrough of a lifetime." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to process the weight of Turner's words. His art had always been a reflection of his inner world, but now it seemed that it was tied to something far greater, a cosmic mystery that had been hidden for centuries. "I'm willing to learn," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "If my work is part of this story, then I want to know the truth. I want to understand why humanity was banned from the galactic war." Turner smiled, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "I knew you would. This is just the beginning, Mr. Marcus. The galaxy is about to discover what humanity has been hiding. And your art will be the key to unlocking it all." As Turner and his entourage left the studio, Marcus stood in the center of the room, his thoughts racing. His art had always been a personal journey, but now it seemed that it was about to become a journey for the entire galaxy. The question remained, was humanity ready to learn the truth about why they had been banned from the galactic war? And more importantly, what would it mean for the future of the human race? For Marcus, this was no longer just about creating art. It was about uncovering a story that had been hidden for far too long. Marcus could hardly sleep that night. The conversation with Andrew Turner had shaken him to his core, and as he lay in bed, the implications of Turner's words began to settle in. His art, which he had always considered to be a form of self-expression, was now tied to something far greater, something that could change the perception of humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. Turner had seen it. He had seen the truth buried within Marcus's work, and the realization that humanity's ban from galactic war was somehow connected to the pieces he had painted left Marcus feeling both exhilarated and overwhelmed. The next few days were a blur. Turner arranged meetings with various scholars, historians, and alien experts, and they all seemed to share one thing in common: they were all fascinated by Marcus's work. Each individual who studied the painting of the soldier standing against a galactic backdrop saw something different, but all of them were united by the same conclusion. Marcus's art told the story of why humans were excluded from the galactic war. It was a tale no one had dared to tell, a story hidden in the depths of galactic history, one that had been erased or deliberately ignored for centuries. It was clear that Marcus's work was more than just a painting. It was a map, a key that unlocked an ancient truth about humanity's place in the universe. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. He had become an overnight sensation in the art world, but more importantly, his work was sparking discussions across the galaxy. Scholars and historians were delving deep into the history of humanity's interactions with other species. Some of them believed that Marcus's painting contained more than just symbolic meaning. They thought it could be the key to understanding why humans had been banned from galactic warfare, a mystery that had eluded the galaxy for millennia. One morning, Turner arrived at Marcus's studio with even more startling news. He had brought with him a team of alien researchers from various planets, some humanoid, others with features so alien that Marcus could hardly recognize them as life forms at all. The team was made up of the brightest minds in galactic history, and they had come specifically to study Marcus's artwork. They began by carefully examining the painting of the soldier, taking notes, and scanning the painting with advanced technology. Marcus watched with fascination as the team worked, their eyes focused intently on the details he had spent years perfecting. They were looking for something deeper, something that was hidden beneath the surface. "This is unlike any other artwork we've encountered," one of the researchers, a pale blue-skinned alien with large black eyes, remarked as she analyzed the painting with a scanning device. "There's a resonance to it. The soldier's hand, the way it reaches out, but also the underlying tension in the figure's posture, it's almost like a message, a warning." Marcus nodded, feeling an odd sense of validation. He had always believed that there was more to his work, but hearing these experts speak about it in such reverent tones made him realize just how powerful his art was. The team spent hours analyzing the painting and discussing its meaning. As they worked, they began to piece together a story, one that had been buried in the depths of galactic history, a story that explained why humanity had been banned from the galactic war. It was a tale of power, of conflict, and of a pivotal moment in galactic history that had led to humanity's exclusion. "The history of the galactic war is complex," one of the researchers, a tall, silver-skinned alien with sharp features, explained. "For centuries, various species have fought for dominance, and humanity was once part of that struggle. But there came a point when the Galactic Council decided that humans, with their potential for unpredictability and violence, could no longer be allowed to participate. Their ability to wage war was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had the power to destroy entire civilizations with their sheer will. And yet, despite this, there was something else, something that made humans different from the other species. They were unpredictable, yes, but they also had an unyielding sense of hope, a belief that peace was possible even in the face of overwhelming odds." Marcus listened intently, his mind racing. He had never considered that humanity's potential for both destruction and peace was so closely intertwined. The galaxy saw humanity as dangerous, a species with the power to change the course of the war in ways that could not be predicted or controlled. But they also saw something else in humanity, a spark, a fire that could either save the galaxy or doom it. The Council made the decision to ban humanity from galactic warfare, the researcher continued. But this decision wasn't based on a fear of human violence alone. It was also because of the potential for humanity to disrupt the delicate balance that had been established between the various species. Humanity's inclusion in the war could have shifted the power dynamics in ways that no one could foresee. And that was something the Council couldn't allow. Marcus's head spun with the weight of the revelation. The truth about humanity's banishment from the Galactic War was not just about their military power, it was about their ability to influence the galaxy in ways that no one could predict. Humanity had been deemed too dangerous because of their potential for both destruction and creation. But why? Marcus asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Why ban them? If humanity had the power to end the war, why would they be excluded? The alien researcher paused, her dark eyes reflecting a deep sadness. Because of the unknown, she said softly. The Council feared that humanity's unyielding spirit, their refusal to accept defeat, could ultimately lead to the destruction of the very balance they sought to protect. They were banned not because they were too weak or too violent, but because they were too strong, too unpredictable, and too full of potential to be controlled. Marcus stood in stunned silence as the weight of the revelation sank in. Humanity had been excluded from the Galactic War not because they were weak or inferior, but because they were too powerful. They had the potential to change the course of history, to alter the balance of power in the galaxy in ways that no one could control. And yet, despite this, humanity had been kept in the dark, their true role in the galaxy hidden from them. Marcus's artwork, it seemed, was the key to unlocking that truth. As the day wore on, the team of researchers continued to study his work, uncovering more and more clues hidden within the layers of paint. Each new discovery revealed more about the connection between humanity and the galaxy, a connection that had been hidden for millennia. For Marcus, the journey had only just begun. His art, once a personal expression of his inner turmoil, had become a bridge between humanity and the galaxy. The truth about why humanity had been banned from galactic warfare was out there, and it was up to Marcus to uncover it, piece by piece. But as he stood in his studio, surrounded by scholars and experts, Marcus couldn't help but wonder, was the galaxy ready for the truth? And more importantly, was humanity ready to accept its place in the cosmic order? The days that followed were filled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Marcus's art had become the center of a galactic mystery, and the truth it contained was slowly unfolding in front of him. Yet, as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. There was a sense of foreboding that hung in the air, something darker lurking just beneath the surface of this newfound revelation. Andrew Turner continued to be a key player in the effort to decode Marcus's work, but there was a strange shift in the way he approached the situation. The once curious art collector now seemed more like a strategist, his every move calculated, his words carefully chosen. He began introducing Marcus to higher-ranking individuals, figures of power in the galactic community, people who had their own agendas. Marcus couldn't help but notice how some of these individuals seemed to have their own interests at heart. They were intrigued by the idea of humanity's potential, but it became clear that they weren't interested in uncovering the truth for the sake of humanity. They were interested in using this knowledge for their own gain. One such individual was General Voron, an imposing figure from the Zelther Confederation, a military alliance that had been watching humanity's rise from the sidelines. Voron was a tall, broad-shouldered alien with skin as black as coal and eyes that seemed to pierce through to the soul. He was known for his tactical genius and his ambition to expand the influence of his people across the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of authority, and his gaze held a sense of unwavering determination. "Mr. Marcus," General Voron said, his voice low and authoritative as he stood before the painting of the human soldier. "This piece of yours, it's more than just a painting. It's a symbol. A symbol of strength. A symbol of power. And power is something we can use." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under Voron's gaze. It was clear that the general saw the potential of humanity's power, but it was becoming increasingly evident that he wasn't interested in peace or understanding. He was interested in domination. You see, General Voron continued, the Galactic Council feared humanity not because of their capacity for destruction, but because they could turn the tide of war in an instant. If humanity were allowed to participate, they would tip the scales in favor of whichever side they chose to ally with. That is power, and power is a commodity. Marcus frowned, feeling a deep unease grow within him. You're saying that humanity's power, our potential, is something to be exploited? Voron's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Exactly. Humanity's unpredictability, their resilience, these are qualities that can be harnessed. Think of it. Your people could become the greatest weapon the galaxy has ever seen. With your strength, your determination, and your ability to defy the odds, you could change the course of galactic history. And we could use that. We could build an empire that spans the stars. Marcus recoiled at the thought. This was not the future he had imagined for humanity. The idea of his people being used as pawns in a galactic power struggle was repulsive. But the more he listened to Voron's words, the more he realized that there were others who saw humanity's potential in the same way, not as a species to be embraced, but as a force to be controlled and manipulated. We would not be used, Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with a growing sense of resolve. Humanity isn't a tool to be wielded. We are a people with our own will, our own destiny. We deserve to choose our own path. General Voron's expression hardened, his smile fading into something far colder. I'm afraid that's not how things work in the galaxy, Mr. Marcus. The Council has already made their decision. Humanity was banned for a reason. Your people are too dangerous to be allowed free rein. But if you were to join forces with me, if you were to embrace the strength within you, then perhaps you could be the force that reshapes the galaxy on your own terms. Marcus stared at the general, his heart racing. There was something deeply unsettling about Voron's words. They weren't just about power, they were about control. Humanity's potential was being viewed not as something to protect, but as something to exploit. And as much as Marcus wanted to believe in humanity's inherent goodness, he couldn't ignore the reality that not everyone saw them in the same light. Humanity has always been more than just power, Marcus said, his voice unwavering. We have the capacity for peace, for growth. And if you think we can be used as a weapon, then you don't understand what it truly means to be human. Voron's eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. You're naive, Marcus. But that's what makes you valuable. You believe in the potential for peace, for cooperation. That's what makes humanity so dangerous. Before Marcus could respond, Turner stepped in, his voice interrupting the tension in the room. General Voron, Turner said, his tone measured, while I understand your interest in harnessing humanity's power, we must be cautious. The truth we are uncovering here goes beyond military might. Marcus's work is a window into something much deeper, something that could change the entire foundation of galactic society. We need to tread carefully. Voron shot Turner a sharp look, but then sighed, clearly unwilling to pursue the matter further. Very well. But remember this, Marcus. The galaxy operates on power. And when humanity understands that, when your people realize that their true strength lies in their ability to shape the future, they will either rise to the occasion, or they will fall. And when that day comes, those who control that power will be the ones who decide humanity's fate. Marcus's mind was in turmoil. What had begun as a journey to uncover the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy had turned into something far more complicated. The galaxy was watching humanity's every move, and there were forces at play that sought to use their power for their own agendas. General Voron's offer was tempting to some, those who believed that power could only be obtained through conquest and control, but Marcus knew that there had to be another way. Humanity's strength was not something to be feared or exploited. It was something to be celebrated, to be nurtured. And if there was a way to change the galaxy's perception of humanity, to show that their potential for peace was just as powerful as their capacity for war, then Marcus was determined to find it. As the meeting came to an end and the visitors departed, Marcus stood alone in his studio, his thoughts a whirlwind of conflict and doubt. Was he truly ready to uncover the full extent of the truth about humanity's role in the galaxy? And more importantly, could he find a way to protect his people from those who would use them for their own gain? The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: Marcus had only just begun to understand the true power of his art, and the responsibility that came with it. The days following his encounter with General Voron weighed heavily on Marcus. He had thought the road to understanding humanity's banishment from the Galactic War would be one of revelation and truth. But as the pieces of the puzzle came together, it became clear that uncovering the truth would be far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Andrew Turner had been insistent that they proceed cautiously, and Marcus had agreed, but a part of him knew that there were things being left unsaid. Turner's hesitation, though measured, suggested that he too was aware of forces beyond their control, forces that might have their own agendas. General Voron's words echoed in Marcus's mind: the galaxy operates on power. Marcus couldn't help but feel the weight of those words. It seemed that in this vast galaxy, everything was governed by strength and influence, and humanity was being swept into that same tide. But there was still more to discover, and Marcus wasn't about to let himself be manipulated by the forces around him. If humanity's banishment was a result of its potential for both destruction and peace, then perhaps the key to the truth lay in understanding the Galactic Council's motives. And if Marcus could learn more about the Council's inner workings, he might just uncover a way for humanity to reclaim its place in the galaxy, not as a weapon, but as a force for change. Turner had arranged another meeting, this time with a highly influential figure in the Galactic Council, Councillor Jean, a sharp-minded and pragmatic leader from the Varela Consortium. The Varela were known for their mastery of diplomacy and their ability to navigate the complex web of galactic politics. Jean was considered one of the most powerful individuals in the council, a person who could sway decisions with a single word. If anyone knew why humanity had been banned from the Galactic War, it was her. The meeting was set in a secure chamber, far away from the prying eyes of the public and the interests of the factions vying for control. Jean entered the room with an air of authority, her long silver hair trailing behind her like a comet's tail. Her eyes, cold and calculating, swept over Marcus as she took her seat. "You must be Marcus," she said, her voice smooth, yet there was an edge to it. "I've heard much about you and your work. Art, it seems, has a way of revealing the truth, whether we like it or not." Marcus nodded, unable to hide the unease that crawled up his spine. Jean was no mere politician, she was a master of manipulation, and her reputation for playing the long game was well known across the galaxy. "I believe you know why I've asked to meet," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "I want to understand why humanity was banned from the Galactic War. The painting, the soldier in my work, it speaks to something deeper, something that I think the Council has kept hidden." Jean studied him for a moment, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. "You're not just an artist, Marcus. You're a seeker of truth. That's dangerous, you know." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Was she trying to intimidate him? Or was she testing him? "Dangerous?" he asked, his voice defiant. "I'm merely trying to understand why my people have been kept in the dark. Why we've been excluded from the Galactic War." Jean leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. "You speak of exclusion, but what if it's not so simple? What if humanity wasn't excluded because of your warlike tendencies, but because of something else entirely?" Marcus's curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Jean paused, her eyes scanning him as if she were weighing his every word. "The Galactic Council is not a simple entity, Marcus. It's a coalition of many different species, each with its own interests and goals. We maintain peace across the galaxy not through understanding, but through control. And control is often about limiting the potential of those who could disrupt the balance we've worked so hard to establish." Marcus frowned. "So, you're saying that humanity was banned from the Galactic War because the Council feared what we might do?" Jean gave a slight nod. "Exactly. The Council understood humanity's potential for both great destruction and great unity. The danger wasn't in your people's violent tendencies. The danger was in the fact that your species couldn't be controlled. Your unpredictability, your drive, your refusal to accept defeat, it was unlike any other species in the galaxy. You could not be molded into an ally that could be manipulated. That made you a threat. Marcus felt a chill run through him. He had always known that humanity's potential was both a blessing and a curse, but hearing it laid out so plainly by one of the most powerful members of the council was sobering. So, humanity was banned because we couldn't be controlled? Jin's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. It wasn't just that. You see, the galaxy operates on a delicate balance of power. If one species, one race, becomes too powerful, it can upset the entire system. The Council feared that if humanity were allowed to participate in the Galactic War, it would tip the scales in unpredictable ways. No one knew what you might do, and that was something the Council could not allow. Marcus felt a deep pang of frustration. And what about our potential for peace? Humanity is capable of more than war. We've built civilizations, created art, found ways to come together in times of crisis. Why wasn't that seen as a strength? Jin's expression hardened again, as though she had heard this argument 1,000 times before. Peace is a fragile thing, Marcus. The Council doesn't have the luxury of hoping for it. The galaxy is at war, and peace is often a matter of convenience. It's not about morality, it's about control. The moment humanity's potential for peace became as powerful as its potential for war, it became an uncontrollable force. That's why the ban was put in place. Marcus felt his chest tighten. The truth was harsh, but it was becoming clearer by the minute. Humanity's banishment from the Galactic War wasn't about a lack of strength or will. It was about fear that humanity's unpredictable nature could shift the balance of power in ways no one could anticipate. The Council had chosen control over freedom, and in doing so, they had kept humanity's greatest asset, its potential, for themselves. But there was something Jin had said that Marcus couldn't shake: the galaxy operates on control. What if there was more to the story? What if the Council's actions weren't just about humanity's power, but about something far more insidious, something that could change everything Marcus thought he knew about his people's place in the galaxy? I think I understand, Marcus said slowly, his mind racing with the implications of what Jin had revealed. But I need to know one thing: why does the Council care so much about controlling humanity? Why does it fear us so? Jin's gaze turned cold, and for a moment, Marcus thought he saw something flicker in her eyes, a secret, perhaps, or a glimpse of something even more dangerous. She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. That, Marcus, is a story for another time. She rose from her seat, her expression unreadable. But know this: the galaxy's future will be shaped by the decisions made today. If humanity's future is to be anything more than a weapon, you must choose your path wisely. With that, Jin turned and left the room, leaving Marcus standing alone, his thoughts swirling in a vortex of questions. The truth was slowly coming to light, but the more he learned, the more complicated the situation became. The ban was just the beginning. And Marcus knew, deep in his gut, that there were still secrets the Council had yet to reveal, secrets that would determine the fate of humanity in the galaxy. Marcus returned to his studio, his mind in turmoil. The revelations from Counselor Jin were both clarifying and unsettling. Humanity had been banned not because of any one failing, but because their very nature made them a force the Galactic Council couldn't control. The Council's fear of unpredictability had led to humanity's exclusion, and now Marcus understood that their potential for unity and resilience was their greatest strength, and their greatest threat. As he stared at the unfinished painting before him, Marcus felt a surge of determination. His art had become a beacon of truth, capable of revealing the hidden fears and motives of the galaxy's ruling elite. He realized it wasn't enough to uncover the past, he had to shape the future. If humanity's place in the galaxy was to be reclaimed, it wouldn't happen through subtle diplomacy or quiet compliance. It would require a revolution of thought and action. The call to action. The first step was to gather allies, those who believed in humanity's potential not as a tool for war but as a force for progress. Marcus knew he couldn't do this alone. He reached out to Turner, whose connections extended far beyond the art world, and together, they began assembling a coalition of individuals who shared their vision. Among them were other humans who had been quietly thriving on the fringes of galactic society, as well as members of alien species who had grown disillusioned with the Council's oppressive rule. One of the most significant recruits was Alia Noor, a charismatic and brilliant strategist from the Thalorians, a race known for their keen intellect and moral philosophy. Alia had been a rising star in the Council, but had left in protest of its authoritarian methods. "Your art has power, Marcus," Alia said during their first meeting. "It speaks to something primal, something universal. If we're going to change the galaxy's perception of humanity, we need to use that power. We need to show them what humanity stands for, not just in words, but in action." The Hidden Network. Through Alia's guidance, Marcus and Turner discovered a hidden network of dissenters within the Galactic Council itself. These individuals, while outwardly loyal to the Council's authority, secretly worked to undermine its oppressive policies. They had long sought a way to challenge the Council's control, but lacked a unifying symbol around which to rally. Marcus's art became that symbol. One of Marcus's paintings, The Flame of Unity, depicted a group of diverse beings standing together against a backdrop of chaos and war. The piece resonated deeply with the network, inspiring hope and courage. The painting was reproduced and distributed in secret, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. For many, it became a call to action, a reminder that unity was more powerful than fear. The Council's countermeasures. The Council, however, was not blind to the growing unrest. Jeanne herself appeared again, this time in a more official capacity, warning Marcus of the dangers he faced. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said, her tone cold but not without a hint of respect. "The Council won't tolerate insubordination, Marcus. If you continue down this path, you'll force their hand." Marcus met her gaze, unflinching. "And what happens if I stop? Humanity remains in the shadows, denied its potential, its voice silenced? I can't accept that." Jeanne's lips tightened. "You don't understand the forces you're dealing with. The Council's authority isn't just about politics, it's about survival. If the balance is upset, the galaxy could descend into chaos." "Maybe the balance needs to be upset," Marcus replied, his voice firm. "The galaxy deserves more than a fragile peace built on fear and control. It deserves hope." For a moment, Jeanne said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned and left. Her departure, however, left Marcus with a lingering sense of foreboding. The Council would not let him continue unchallenged. The catalyst. The Council's fears were realized sooner than Marcus anticipated. Word of his movement reached the galactic media, and debates erupted across countless worlds. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, a species capable of inspiring change. Others viewed them as a dangerous wildcard, a threat to stability. In the midst of this chaos, Marcus unveiled his most ambitious work yet, a massive triptych titled The Three Truths. The first panel depicted humanity's resilience, showcasing scenes of survival against overwhelming odds. The second portrayed the galaxy's current state, a fragile, controlled peace enforced by fear. The final panel offered a vision of what could be, a galaxy united, its diversity embraced rather than suppressed. The unveiling was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching billions. It sparked a wave of protests and demonstrations, as citizens from countless species demanded a re-evaluation of the Council's policies. The painting became a rallying cry, its message clear: unity through understanding, not control. The breaking point. But the Council was prepared. They declared Marcus a subversive element, branding him and his allies as threats to galactic stability. A warrant was issued for his arrest, and the Council deployed enforcers to dismantle his growing network. Marcus and his allies went underground, using the network of dissenters to stay one step ahead. Despite the Council's efforts, their message continued to spread, reaching even the most remote corners of the galaxy. The more the Council tried to suppress them, the stronger their movement became. In the face of mounting pressure, Marcus remained steadfast. He knew the fight would be long and arduous, but he also knew it was worth it. Humanity's place in the galaxy was more than a political issue, it was a question of identity, of purpose. And Marcus was determined to ensure that humanity's voice was heard. The turning tide. As the movement gained momentum, cracks began to appear in the Council's authority. Planets that had long been loyal to the Council began to question their allegiance. Alliances shifted, and the galaxy's power dynamics began to change. For the first time, the possibility of a new galactic order seemed within reach. But with change came danger. Marcus knew that the Council's response would grow more aggressive. The question was no longer whether humanity could reclaim its place in the galaxy, it was whether they could survive the battle to get there. The galaxy stood on the precipice of upheaval. The movement Marcus had started was no longer just about humanity reclaiming its place, it had become a rallying cry for all those oppressed by the Galactic Council's control. The Council's grip was slipping, but in its desperation, it had turned to drastic measures. The Council strikes back. The Council unleashed a campaign of propaganda, branding Marcus and his allies as dangerous radicals intent on plunging the galaxy into chaos. They disseminated doctored images and fabricated reports of violent uprisings supposedly orchestrated by the movement. For many, the Council's narrative was convincing, fear of instability outweighed hope for change. But the movement fought back with the truth. Leaked documents exposed the Council's manipulative tactics and the extent of its control over galactic media and economies. Marcus's allies worked tirelessly to counter the Council's lies, using every channel available to spread their message. Marcus, meanwhile, became a symbol of resistance. His paintings, now banned by the Council, were shared in secret, inspiring millions. One piece, The Chains of Fear, depicted a figure breaking free from shadowy tendrils, symbolizing the struggle against oppression. It became an emblem of hope for those who believed in a better future. A dangerous mission. As the conflict escalated, Marcus and his inner circle planned a daring mission, a direct appeal to the people of the galaxy. They would broadcast live from the heart of the Council's territory, revealing the truths the Council had fought so hard to suppress. Alienor, ever the strategist, coordinated the operation. "If we succeed, it will be a turning point," she told Marcus. "But if we fail, the Council will crush us, and everything we've built will be lost." Despite the risks, Marcus agreed. "We've come too far to turn back now. The galaxy deserves to know the truth." The plan was audacious: infiltrate the Council's central communications hub on the planet Aranis Prime. The hub was heavily guarded, its security systems nearly impenetrable. But with the help of their allies within the Council, the team managed to gain access. The broadcast. The broadcast began with Marcus standing before a backdrop of his paintings, each one a testament to humanity's resilience and creativity. His voice was steady but impassioned as he spoke. To the people of the galaxy, he began, "I am Marcus Holt, an artist, a human, and a seeker of truth. For too long, we have lived under the shadow of fear and control. The Galactic Council has silenced voices, suppressed potential, and denied us the future we deserve." He revealed the Council's manipulations, showing evidence of its efforts to maintain power at the expense of freedom. He spoke of humanity's banishment, not as a punishment for their flaws but as a calculated move to prevent their unpredictable nature from disrupting the status quo. "But humanity is not the enemy," Marcus declared. "We are builders, dreamers, and survivors. And we are not alone. Across the galaxy, countless beings share our desire for a future built on understanding, not fear." The broadcast reached billions, and the response was immediate. Protests erupted on dozens of planets, with citizens demanding change. The Council's attempts to cut the transmission failed, thanks to Alia's careful planning. For the first time, the galaxy saw the Council for what it was, an institution clinging to power at any cost. The Council's last stand. In the aftermath of the broadcast, the Council launched a full-scale offensive against the movement. Marcus and his allies became fugitives, hunted across the galaxy. The Council's enforcers targeted dissenting planets, hoping to quash the uprising through sheer force. But the movement had grown too large to be contained. Entire systems declared independence, forming alliances based on shared ideals. The council found itself fighting on multiple fronts, its resources stretched thin. Amid the chaos, Marcus continued to inspire. His final painting of the conflict, The Rising Star, depicted a figure reaching toward a glowing orb, symbolizing hope and unity. The painting became a symbol of the movement's ultimate goal, a galaxy where all species could thrive together. A new era. The council's collapse was not immediate, but it was inevitable. After years of conflict, the movement succeeded in dismantling the old regime. A new galactic assembly was formed, with representatives from every species, including humanity. This assembly pledged to govern through collaboration and transparency, ensuring that no single entity could wield unchecked power. Marcus, now regarded as a hero and visionary, declined a formal role in the new government. "I'm an artist," he said when offered a position. "My role is to inspire, not to lead." He returned to Earth, where he continued to paint, his work now celebrated across the galaxy. His final series, The Journey of Humanity, chronicled the struggles and triumphs of the movement, serving as a reminder of what had been achieved, and what still remained to be done. The legacy. Decades later, Marcus's name was spoken with reverence on countless worlds. His art continued to inspire generations, reminding them of the power of unity and the importance of standing up for what is right. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer defined by fear or exclusion, but by their contributions to a brighter future. They were no longer seen as a threat but as a source of hope and inspiration, a testament to what could be achieved when courage and creativity overcame fear and control. And though Marcus lived out his days in relative quiet, his legacy burned brightly, a beacon guiding the galaxy toward the stars. 2 of 2.